I'm a 24-year-old male, and this happened when I was about 18 or 19 and used to live in California. I've since moved away. There's a forest close to my old house with a creek running through it. My older brother's friends and I would frequently explore this area. We all liked finding abandoned buildings and structures to explore. And the main reason why we came to this forest so often was because there was a storm drain that emptied out into the creek. So, we would explore it pretty often. It became a hangout spot for us. Anyway, one day, my 3 friends and I decided to go to the storm drain. Let's call them N, J, and G for privacy. There were 2 parking lots on both sides of the forest. J and G came in one car, and I met them there in his car. This information will be relevant to the story later on. So, we're walking through the forest, just goofing around. We eventually make it to the entrance of that storm drain. The way it looked, there were 2 entrances right beside each other. They were about 9 feet high, and when you enter the tunnels, there's immediately a steep incline. Then there's these concrete pillars coming out of the ground. It kind of looked like an old temple or something. We just always thought that was cool. And eventually, those 2 tunnels came together into one. So, we make it to the top, but it's flooded up there because of the recent rain. So, we decided to turn back. By now, we really didn't realize that it was getting pretty dark. We can't really see a lot of light coming in from the entrance. As we got closer, at this point, my friends N and G were further ahead of J and me. J and I make it right up to the entrance in the drain. And J comes up to me and says there's a guy out there with a monkey mask on. At first, it sounded funny to me, but then at the same time, a chill went down my spine. So, I follow him. He points to the guy, and sure enough, there's this huge dude in dirty clothes walking with a bicycle. He has a monkey mask covering his whole head. At this point, all 4 of us see this guy. We're not really saying anything to each other, just watching him. None of us were expecting this to happen, so we're all kind of shell-shocked. And it wasn't around Halloween or anything, so we weren't sure why he was wearing this mask in the woods all alone. We then see the monkey man picking things up off of the ground and putting them in a little sack. We were probably only 15 feet away from this guy. He wasn't even acknowledging that we were there. J and G decided to head back to the car because they were getting freaked out, and N and I decided to stay back and see what else he was going to do. So, they leave N and I to walk up further off the hill on the main trail to stay hidden from him. It was almost dark outside now. It was getting pretty creepy, but at the same time, it was just cool experiencing something strange like this. We were both kind of thrilled about it. J and G are both out of view by this point. And N and I lose sight of that monkey man. So, we're looking around for him, and then we hear leaves rustling down by the trail. We then see him emerge from a bush very fast. He just stands in the middle of the trail looking straight for about 5 seconds. This really creeped us out. We weren't sure why he was acting so strange. He then grabs his bike and walks on the trail in the direction that J and G went. So now we decide to follow him. That trail goes up a hill and then leads back down, so we didn't see him for a bit. But once we ascended the hill, we saw him just standing there with his back toward us doing nothing. Then all of a sudden, he starts walking very fast in the direction of J and G and tells them that the monkey man is quickly walking in their direction, they need to get to their car fast, and then pick us up at the other parking lot on the other side of the forest. Anne and I quickly head back to the other parking spot. As we're walking, it's now pitch black outside, and we're using our phone flashlights to navigate through the forest. All of a sudden, all around us, we hear what sounds like a lot of humans mimicking loud noises, but very loudly. Some sound like they're very close to us, but we see absolutely nothing. Then we started running towards the parking lot. The whole time, we're just hearing these loud screams and yells. That adrenaline rush helped us get to that parking lot very fast, and once there, the yells just stopped. Jay and G were there already, so when we got in the car, they drove us over to N's car at the original parking spot. Then we all drove out of that forest. I'm still not too sure what to make out of that whole experience. But I've always heard growing up that there's a Buddhist temple in that forest and it's very secretive. I'm not sure if that had something to do with the monkey noises or what, but all I can do is make assumptions. The story doesn't completely end here though. Sometime later on, one of my brother's friends told me that he went to that same forest at night with a few of his friends. At some point during the night, a cop came down there and told them to leave. Mainly because teenagers go there all the time to have sex and smoke weed, so cops frequent them. The cops talked to them for a bit and said that the monks at the temple don't like people in the forest, especially after dark. And even the cop said he was angrily told to leave by one of those monks who spoke to him from the trees. Not really sure how much of this I actually believe. There was another incident when we were there. A rock was thrown from the trees at my friends and me, and we had no idea where it came from. It was strange, and luckily that rock didn't hit any of us. A few years later, when I got back to California, Anne and I decided to go back to that forest. And while we were there, we were talking about that monkey man again and that yelling that we heard. Then Temple came back into the conversation. We both then decided to go check it out again to see if we could find anything that would shed light on what we experienced all those years back. Now, there's a street that leads all the way up to that temple itself. But it was kind of far from where we were. So, we decided to take the more adventurous route and climb the side of a steep hill that would get us there quicker. Once we got to the top, we stayed by the tree line and just looked out at the property. But there was no one there. We walked around the area, and since we didn't see any cars, we assumed no one was there at that moment. But there were some open doors that led into that building. We heard a few noises, so we stayed away. Obviously, people were there. They were trespassing. But as we were walking away, from the distance, we saw 3 people walking over to us, a man, a woman, and their daughter who was probably around 20 years old. They told us they were lost and didn't know how to get back to the trail and were trying to find the parking lot. This was really strange to us because where they'd come from was the opposite side of where the parking area was. And the forest really isn't hard to get lost in since it's just one consecutive trail that goes around the entire thing. Where they came from wasn't a trail. It was almost like they just appeared on those temple grounds because it's like this huge open area. We didn't see anyone. Regardless, we walked them over to the main road that led up to the temple and told them if they followed that, they would find the parking lot. They thanked us and left, and Anne and I stayed for a few more minutes and talked about how weird it was that they were lost in a very simple hiking area, but chalked it up as maybe their first time, so we brushed it off. After all that, we decided to leave. So, we walked back onto the street that goes to the parking lot. We thought we were going to run into that family again since we had only left a few minutes after them. But when we got to the bottom, there was a huge gate blocking the entrance to the road that was leading up to the temple. And we still didn't see them. So, Anne and I had to walk around it and go back into the woods, which was very hilly. We had to climb over fallen trees, go through bushes, and cross a creek. Once we made it back to the parking lot, we were surprised we didn't see a family at all. It's very hard to climb over all those obstacles. The parents were definitely in their late 40s at least. That would have slowed them down for at least us to catch up to them since they only had a few minutes head start. In that parking lot, there were no other cars when we first arrived. That family just straight up disappeared. That's my story of some of the strange things that happened in and around that forest. I'm still not sure what that guy was doing walking around with that monkey mask alone in the woods, and if those noises that we heard are connected with the monk and that temple, or if there's some kind of cult and we saw one of them wearing a monkey mask. It's all still a complete mystery to me, and I'm not sure what to make of the family also that disappeared out of nowhere. But those were definitely some of the strangest experiences I've ever had. That place still holds a lot of nostalgia for my friends and me. I'll definitely go back there again someday. Perhaps I'll have even more stories to tell.
I'm an icon, man. And my girl about a 10. I should fuck her in a Benz.